Hello and welcome to another edition of Moment with the Mayor. It's our weekly conversation with the mayors of the Lowcountry. I'm your host, Richard Todd from The Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. And today it's time to have our monthly conversation with North Charleston Mayor Keith Summey. Mayor Summey, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back, Richard.
Anything been happening since the last month we had you here?
No, it's been so quiet. I don't have a boring job.
Well, we're getting ready to dive into all of it. Stand by, because a lot has happened since we last spoke with North Charleston Mayor Keith Summey, our guest for this edition of Moment with the Mayor, coming up next right here on Comcast C2. And welcome back to Moment with the Mayor as we have our monthly conversation with North Charleston Mayor Keith Summey. And Mayor Summey, since last we met, there has been a disclosure that the City of North Charleston is going to be suing the state of South Carolina in federal court, or really suing, I guess, when the Army Corps of Engineers, right, and enjoining state agencies to that federal lawsuit. Why was this a necessity, and why in federal court?
Well, we felt that part of the the entire memorandum of understanding was put in as part of the EIS study that was approved by the Army Corps of Engineers. And in that, it said that no rail could go through the north. And so we feel that if the state is going to buy property, try to run rail through the north, the EIS needs to be looked at again because it's in violation of the EIS. We gave that information to the Army Corps. They were not forthcoming on acting on it. So we felt that we had no choice but to file litigation in federal court, since it is a federal agency, and it would give us the opportunity to enjoin the state agencies into that suit as well over the issues that we have with them. And that's why it was filed in federal court. It wasn't actually a lawsuit, it's a letter of it's an intent to file the lawsuit. What goes in with that is the complete documentation of the lawsuit. And they hold it for 60 days, and then after the 60-day time frame, it becomes an official lawsuit. So
it's required by federal law to give a disclosure of 60 days notice to sue in federal court. Was there a concern that you couldn't get a fair hearing in a state court? And is this an attempt to get a federal judge to look at it with, say, a fresh set of eyes and maybe rule on whether the memorandum of understanding is binding or non-binding?
Well, I think that that was the ultimate thing. I'm not sure it had anything to do with whether we thought we couldn't get a fair hearing in state court. We know that it puts the state court in a bad position because they are appointed by the legislature. And so we didn't want to have to put our people. I have a great respect for those members of the court system and hate to put them in a position where I think, since it's an issue between the state and the city, that a higher court should end up hearing it, because they are not affiliated with the state and not affiliated with the city.
Well, while you are looking to sue the state in federal court, the state, though they're saying it's not a lawsuit, it's a petition, they're petitioning against the City of North Charleston concerning the memorandum of understanding and the entire situation with whether or not it's binding or non-binding as such. What was your reaction when you heard that the Attorney General had filed this petition against the City of North Charleston?
We weren't surprised. We think it's just a legal maneuver on the part of the state to try to get a hearing in the state court prior to having any federal issue. One of the things that happens, if we don't resolve this issue, we're going to federal court anyway. So whether we can enjoin those things remains to be seen. But the issue is well above and beyond whether it's the state is the state is the state. You know, one of the things I think people fail to realize, if the state port authority is the agency and the only state agency that we have an agreement with, they're also the only state agency that handles containers. And if they say they're not going to allow any of their containers to go through the north end of the base, then all their customers will have to do some other means of getting their containers off the Navy base instead of going through the north end, or they are in violation of the MOU.
So the Attorney General is stating that the memorandum of understanding signed between the city and the State Ports Authority can't bind the entire state to that one agreement.
That's what he's trying.
That's his position.
His position.
What do your attorneys say for the City of North Charleston?
We completely disagree. This is an unusual case in that legislation created the MOU. We were mandated by the state of South Carolina for the Port Authority and the city to create an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, we both could agree to. And if we could agree to it, that the state would transfer properties to both the port and to the City of North Charleston. They transferred those properties. The State Budget and Control Board voted to transfer those properties, which means they had to approve the Memorandum of Understanding in which to do that. That's comprised of the governor, somebody from the House, somebody from the Senate, and other elected positions in the state of South Carolina. So them to say that the state of South Carolina was not engaged, they started it and they finished it.
So have you spoken with the Attorney General about this, and is there any way that compromise can be reached while you sue the state in federal court and the state sues you in state court? Obviously, there's going to be taxpayer expense when it comes to legal expenses. Is there room for compromise to avoid all this litigation, or has that horse already left the barn?
Well, the horse hasn't left the barn, but he's raring to go. We're always willing to negotiate and sit down. There's certain things that we are not willing to negotiate on. One of those is a rail yard in the north end of the Navy base. That will destroy what we've worked so hard to do on the Clemson project to bring quality jobs, not just to North Charleston, but the Low Country and the state of South Carolina. And this has been our goal. That's why we gave that property to Clemson University at the request of some of the legislators. We're willing to sit down and talk, try to find a way to make it work, but there has to be some things that the city receives in order for that to happen, to make sure that we're not damaging the quality of life of those folks who live in that area.
In the end, you're seeing some things happening in Columbia that are direct results of this. State Senator Larry Grooms introduced a last-minute budget amendment added to the budget that passed the Senate, that he later apologized to you about, that said that any city that would sue the state in federal court would be required to return state funds within 10 days. Now, Senator Grooms had told the House members, don't vote for this, don't concur with it, but as far as we know at the moment, it's still in the budget. But what was that like when Senator Grooms proposed that and then apologized to you for proposing what seems to be bullying tactics and the kind of governmental extortion that states can't stand the federal government doing, and now they're using the same kind of methods?
Well, I think it was a knee-jerk reaction. Personally, I like Senator Grooms. I think he's a nice person, a fine man. On this, I think he made a wrong decision. I think he realizes he made a wrong decision, but I think like you said, the horse is already pulling that wagon, and I'm not so sure he can pull it back in. The bottom line, it's unconstitutional. It deprives the city of their freedom of speech. It deprives us of funds that are mandated by law that we receive. So again, if we have to, we will challenge it in the court system.
So it's possible that we could have another lawsuit in that area. Absolutely. As well. Well, and that's an important reminder, folks, about the reason why you need to pay attention to what's going on in Columbia with the budget. And we'll talk more with North Charleston Mayor Keith Summey about a variety of topics coming up right here as this edition of Moment with the Mayor continues on Comcast C2 next. And welcome back to Moment with the Mayor as we continue our conversation with North Charleston Mayor Keith Summey. And Mayor Summey, one other question on the dueling lawsuits or the state and federal court issues or whatever. Have you had discussions about any of this with Governor Haley? Have you been speaking with Commerce Secretary Bobby Hitt? Have you met with Norfolk Southern and the State Ports Authority, all the other parties that are sort of involved in this? Have you had discussions with these groups of people?
I met with Mr. Hitt with Commerce the first week in June, and have not received a phone call to have any subsequent meetings. I have heard that the potential of people getting back together might not be until toward the end of July. So no dialogue has been going on. I've never had any direct dialogue with the governor about the issue, except at a public hearing she had downtown, and I brought it up, and she told me that Mr. Hitt would be in touch with me.
Let me move on to some other issues that North Charleston's dealing with, and obviously the Boeing effect and what Boeing has meant to the city of North Charleston, a game changer. But right now, the National Labor Relations Board is suing Boeing, saying they have done something illegal in retaliatory practices against the union by locating the plant in a right-to-work state in the city of North Charleston. What has been the reaction of your constituents and just your reaction in general about what is going on right now that threatens the very existence of Boeing in the city of North Charleston?
It makes us very cognizant of the fact as to why a lot of our major industries locate plants in other countries. And here you got a company that's done it right. Boeing has added some 4,000 employees in the Seattle area since they made the announcement of building a plant in South Carolina. They just a week or so ago have announced that they're adding more employees there to beef up operations, and those are all union. What people fail to realize, when Vought and Alenia were two aeronautics companies that were located here in North Charleston, they had a union. A right-to-work state doesn't mean that you can't have a union. It means that it's not mandated. The state doesn't require unions. We don't sit there and say we enforce union rules. But companies can have unions within their guidelines. The employees voted not to have a union, and I think that is the key component. And so you've got a company that is investing on the West Coast, investing on the East Coast, doing everything that's right, and what does the federal government want to come and do? They want to come and bother them. They want to make them spend legal. I think everything's will be fine. But it's the legal costs and the baloney that people have to put up with. I mean, the next time they could put the plant in South America or Mexico. What are we doing? What kind of message are we sending to corporate America? Unions at one time were a necessary thing in this country, but all the guidelines that the federal government has passed, in the city of North Charleston, every year we have to do a study to see what we need to have at entry level in every position to be competitive in the job market. And that's in every section of this country. You're competitive with what it takes to hire good qualified people, whether it's the city of North Charleston, whether it's the private sector or what have you. And you're required to have health insurance now. I mean, all these things that are required, the unions are not as necessary as they used to be. But if people want unions, they have a right to have them. These folks voted not to have it. The ultimate decision made by Boeing was based upon the fact that they could put out a quality product in a timely fashion and earn a good dollar for the work they did. It was a corporate decision to locate here. I know the negotiations that went on to get them here, and none of it had anything to do about unions.
And of course, they just recently had the ribbon cutting ceremony on the assembly plant. You were there right next to your good friend, Senator Hugh Leatherman, and Governor Haley and others there. And it's been so impressive to watch that plant spring up from the ground and see what we have there in Boeing.
It said so much about the quality of the workforce in the low country in the state of South Carolina. That project was built 6 months, finished 6 months early, over 3 million hours of construction time out there, not one lost hour due to injury. Now, that is something that I'll be using and other people will be using as we go out and recruit more business and more industry. Look at the workforce that we have. And that's one of the things that Washington, you got to remember how negative they were about the quality of workforce that we had in the original view when we were trying to get this thing. But you can rest assured we're going to be working trying to bring even more.
Let me ask you something we've talked with other mayors about on this program, something that is going on all across America because of the 2010 census, the redrawing of district lines in the city of North Charleston because of demographic population shifts and such. There's two interesting components about this. One is the fact that because of population shifts, especially moving more towards Dorchester County, you're going to have a situation where two sitting city councilmen, Bob King and Kurt Taylor, are going to end up having to compete for the same seat. These are two guys you've known for a long time, and that's probably a little bit of a difficult situation that voters will have to choose from, but there's probably no way to avoid that.
It's not. We had such a population growth in the northern end of the city. 10 years ago, we had probably 10, 11,000 people in Dorchester County. We now have 23, 24,000 people. in Dorchester County. Our districts are comprised of right under 10,000 people per district with an overall population of almost 100,000. And we have to divide those by population. So we had to add those 2 districts up in the north end. We had one of our council members that was not running for re-election, so that gave us her district we could subdivide, because one of the things you're supposed to try to do is protect the incumbency, that they don't live in the district with another one. Ultimately, this was the one area that had to be pulled together, and Councilman King and Councilman Taylor voted for the merger of those 2 districts. They're both excellent council people and have done a good job, and I guess the toughest role is going to be of those of the voters in deciding who to elect.
Because they're going to both be running for office. They both intend to run for re-election.
That's my understanding, yes.
Now, you mentioned the growth in the northern end of town. You have a North Charleston City Council district that is entirely in Dorchester County, and another one that's 90% in Dorchester County.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. I guess the question would be, did Dorchester County have anything to fear from the city of North Charleston? I say this because of the end of the Watson Hill battle. It's now official that the city of Charleston is no longer the only major city west of the Ashley. North Charleston is west of the Ashley. What do you say to the people of Dorchester County who are worried, if you will, about development and plans North Charleston has there?
Well, you know, I think people are always fearful of change. I think the Mark Clark Expressway is a good example of that. But I think what they'll find is that North Charleston is not only a business-friendly community, we try to work with folks. If you look at what we've done in Dorchester County today, it's all been quality development. And I think has added to the worth of Dorchester County. The new schools that have come up in that area, we help with those schools, in funding those schools, but also in providing activities for those schools as well. We think that we're a good member of the community of Dorchester County and a good member of the community of Charleston County, and try to work with the county councils of both entities to make sure that we don't disrupt quality of life for anybody. Our goal is to enhance quality of life, not disrupt it.
And I want to let you know that coming up soon on an edition of Moment with the Mayor, we're going to be talking with the newly elected mayor of the town of Summerville, Mayor Bill Collins, and we'll ask about his neighbors in North Charleston. And we'll talk more with North Charleston Mayor Keith Summey as this edition of Moment with the Mayor continues here on C2 next. And welcome back to Moment with the Mayor, as we have a few moments remaining with North Charleston Mayor Keith Summey. And Mayor Summey, speaking of the horse being out of the barn, one of the proposals being discussed in North Charleston is to try to come up with some commercial architectural review standards, trying to control the way that North Charleston looks a little bit. You know, I always use as an example what I call the Rivers Avenueization of the Low Country, putting up red lights and having more fast food restaurants or things that pop up, which is not necessarily the greatest compliment to North Charleston, but you guys now are looking to try to, I guess, develop some standards that other towns have when it comes to how things look in the future. But is it almost already too late to do that now in North Charleston? No,
because the way it works, if there's a building that is vacant over a period of time and they go to reopen it, they have to bring it up to the standards that we will establish. You know, the issue is we inherited as a city a lot of the development of Rivers Avenue that was already there. Now, the city has been going back under a plan by the council. If you notice, every time we put a new signalization in, you've got the mast arms and the underground wiring going to it and what have you. And in a lot of our newer development does have a better character than a lot of the older development that we had. But we still notice that sometimes the facade is not as nice as it might be in some of the other areas. So we're actually looking at establishing some guidelines in which we can have input into the way buildings look.
Are you going to try to make it a little bit more homogeneous? I mean, from the standpoint that when you look at mandatory landscaping, sign controls, stressing brick or stucco facades, some people would criticize, say, a place like Hilton Head, and even Mount Pleasant sometimes gets that rap for the way that things look kind of the same. Is that sort of kind of what you're looking at in North Charleston? No, we're just looking at what each individual facility or building that's built looks like. We just think that we don't want to go overboard with controls, but we do want to make sure that what is there is pleasing to the eye and inviting to the people that will be utilizing the facility.
and people traveling through our community have something nice to look at. We're not looking at something that's going to make the cost of the project go up dramatically, but we do think that we are now a city of almost 100,000 people. We're the third largest city in the state. We're the #1 retail city in the state. We think making it look a little bit better is not going to damage any of that.
Let me ask you about a new hire that the City of North Charleston had recently. You hired former state prosecutor Blair Jennings to be what is in essence a part-time judge to oversee some of the jury trials. There's a backlog. The state Supreme Court Chief Justice Jean Tolwa had ordered states magistrates and municipal courts to clear backlogs of DUI cases and things like that. And you've hired Blair Jennings to sort of help you with that backlog.
Absolutely, and Blair is very qualified, has a lot of court experience. And you know, we have had our chief judge retired, and so we had an opportunity to bring Blair in. We think he's going to do a wonderful job for us. And with this backlog of jury trials, the Supreme Court has ruled that they have to go away. And so we're bringing someone in we think that can help us accomplish that. Council is always supportive of doing those things that make my role as the administrator easier, and this was one of those things they did for us.
And that was interesting to find out that North Charleston had one of the largest backlogs of any city in the entire state, with over 560 on file.
We have the busiest court system in the state of South Carolina. I mean, if you look at the fines and forfeitures that are sent to the state, we send more than any other municipality in the state.
Really quickly, it's hard to believe we're already talking about this. 4th of July coming up, Riverfront Park. You've got another big free festival there with fireworks and more. What's going to happen?
Absolutely. 3 to 10, we'll have live entertainment going on through the day. We'll have food vendors out there, so you can either bring your food or there'll be food there for you to purchase. We ask that you support the vendors as much as possible. We're expecting 12 to 15,000 people, and of course at dark it will culminate with one of the finest fireworks in the state of South Carolina.
And it's absolutely free to show up there for the 4th of July at Riverfront Park. And Mayor Summey, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see what happens between now and the next time we talk.
In behalf of all the mayors, I want to thank you and Comcast for helping us get the word out to the public through this show on a monthly basis.
We appreciate the conversation, absolutely. And thank you for the kind words. And by the way, it's a reminder as well, Boeing, the port situation, lawsuits, redrawing district lines, 526 and more. The future is now in the Low Country, folks, so you better be a part of the conversation. Our thanks to North Charleston Mayor Keith Summey for joining us, and a reminder that if you have any comments or questions about previous shows or topics with the mayors, you can email us mayor@comcastc2.com. I'm Richard Todd from the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA, thanking you for watching this edition of Moment with the Mayor right here on Comcast C2.